what's happening, fellas? I am Tommy, and you are on the Love Boat. Hope you're having a good evening. Krista Melinda, good to see you. Sandy Wendy, what's happening? Caroline in Canada, glad you're here. Hey, Sandy Wendy, I'm glad you are here. We're going to get this puppy underway in a minute. Hey, Jane Aldrich, glad you're here. Lisa Trimble, good to see you, Lisa. Do you know people? Timothy Glass, what's up? We lost Michael Madsen on my birthday. You guys know who Michael Madsen is, correct? Put a 1 in the chat if you know who I'm talking about, but I bet most of you do. Lisa Ayers, good to see you. If you don't, Michael Madsen, hey, Timothy Bird, good to see you. Michael Madsen was in a lot of movies, and he did a lot of Quentin Tarantino stuff. He did Kill Bill. He played Bill's brother in Kill Bill. Wine a little bit more, good to see you. Hey, Rocket Queen, here I am. He was also in Reservoir Dogs, played a huge part in Reservoir Dogs. And he was just, hey, Barbara Aldrich. Hello, Ann from Mass. Good to have you here. He was an excellent actor. He was a really good actor. And he also struggled his entire life with alcohol. He was an alcoholic. And hey, Brock Bandy, I don't hold that against anybody. But we lost him on July the 3rd. And the cynical part of me, maybe, or the part of me that just knows the world that we live in, I said at the time, it's probably going to end up being drug related in some way. Noel, good to see you. And it wasn't. He died of his heart quit. But they said the reason it did was because of alcoholism. Dylan McLittleG, good to see you. Hey, Pete Taylor. And if I've never said hello to you, hello. Glad that you're here. Because I don't remember saying Little McGee, but perhaps I have. The brain ain't what it used to be. You know what I mean? The old gray matter. Actually, the old gray matter is probably working better than it has in a very long time. I have nothing to complain about when it comes to the gray matter. And if you watched my brother earlier, and I'm sure that many of you have, he told you that we bought a pizza today. And if you asked me if this was the best pizza I've ever had in my life, because you hear me say a lot about living here. Hey, Relatable Reese, glad you're here. Tony Scooter, glad you are here. By the way, happy birthday, Relatable Reese, belated. I would not say this was the best pizza I ever had in my life, but I've had a lot of pizza. I'll tell you this, it was the best pizza I ever had in my life that I paid $5 for with 2 toppings. I was a little blown away by that. And it's different. It tasted, there's just something about everything here tastes real, if that makes sense. And that, when you're used to things being augmented, right, by Clark W. Griswold and all of the people who work hard. Well, I'm glad that, something, there's nothing wrong with the background, my friend. Nothing wrong with the background at all. But I do appreciate you popping up to say hello. It means a lot to me. It really does. And I'm sure to everyone else, we do love saying hello. Yeah, was from Moose's Tooth in Anchorage, Alaska. What a great name for a place, Moose's Tooth. I want one of their t-shirts. Dan Young, just missed Johnny. Yeah, just missed him. But we also went in the ocean today, which was a lot of fun. But buying a pizza for that much money was just beautiful. Caffeine and Diesel, glad that you are here. All is well with me. In fact, I can't remember a time when all was more well with me, and that's a beautiful thing to say. Heather Rhodes, how are you? And I listened to my brother's feed just about every night. I don't always comment because we are in a developing country, and sometimes I fear that if I'm in there at the same time, I may slow down his internet enough where it will be a problem. Hey, Kimberly. Good to have you here. But at the end, I heard he was talking about the United States of America. And you know something? You got to be wicked careful when you talk about the United States of America if you no longer live there, because people get really, really angry. And I get it. Just Joan, how are you? But I'm going to tell you 2 things. Number one, the people that get angry if we talk about the United States of America are all our age. For real. If you talk bad about the United States of America, nobody under the age of 30 will give you a lick of crap. And I find that sad. I really do. When we grew up, they taught civics, and they had things like Schoolhouse Rock, right? Every Saturday morning. And if you are a music fan, there were musicians throughout the years that have said, you know what, we're really letting our country down and letting our kids down by not teaching civics. There was a lot of musicians who sort of got on that bandwagon. What is the name of the crazy musician? Yeah, Frank Zappa. All right, couldn't come up with his name. Frank Zappa kind of led the procession on that. Actually went to Congress to complain about it. I'm just a bill. Yes, I'm only a bill. Well played, Dane. You know, I had a friend who was a prostitute and a heroin addict, and had one of the most beautiful souls of any human being I had ever met. Hey, V-bombs. And, you know, we just had a relationship where I would stop at her house first thing in the morning, and I would buy my drugs through her. I had robbed everybody in the city, and no one would sell to me. So I would hide in the closet while she bought heroin, and I would buy some for her, and then I would fix and I would leave. And the first time that I had a stroke, I had a very serious one, and I had it in her house. And I'm really confident that had 43, yes, I had it too, right? Anybody under 30. I'm convinced if I had that stroke anywhere else, we wouldn't be talking. But somehow this woman whose name was Sherry got me downstairs into my car and drove me all the way to the emergency room, got me into the emergency room, and then disappeared, right? With my car parked, right? And I had a beautiful car at the time, and it was an antique, not an antique, but a vintage car, beautiful vintage car. And she drove it there. And when I came to, all of my stuff was next to the bed. My keys were in the pocket. I had no idea what happened. I had no idea how I got there. Just an absolutely beautiful person. But the last time that I saw her, she gave me the I'm just a bill guy. Apparently, way back in the 70s, and I don't remember this, but you had the ability to write in and get a little bill guy. And if you know what I'm talking about from Schoolhouse Rock, you remember him. He was shaped like a bill, almost like a newspaper, right? He was paper and his hands were out here. But it's one of my prized possessions. I don't take it out much because I'm shocked that you can still read everything on it. It's in absolutely incredible condition. Can you kill? Sorry about that. I was yelling instructions to my brother. So I'm going to talk about the United States, and I hope I don't bum anybody out. But because people ask all the time, I get tons of emails from people who say, "Man, do you miss it? You know, do you miss being home?" I can't tell you how fast I have come to not thinking of that as home, and it's sad to me because I love the United States of America. I love the people there. I was big in civics. Any updates on justice for Merrill? I believe that would be New Hampshire, not Vermont. And yeah, I will absolutely bring you up to speed on that. And I will keep everybody abreast of this. Here's the deal with that. It plods forward. I was asked to make some decisions concerning that because, as I said, and you guys may not believe this, and I'm sure the people that hate me don't believe this, I will not watch anything that people do about me. I don't watch it. If you make a video about me and it's negative, I've never seen it, I assure you, I don't watch it. It's bad for me. I know what it does for my head. And I heard a great expression once that I absolutely love. What people think about me is none of my business. Right? What people think about me is none of my business. However, when they step over a line and it's happened, well, what also has happened is my attorneys have come back and said, you do know that there's more than one of these people, right? It puts me in an awkward position. This is not my get down, right? Honest to God, this goes against everything I believe in. May sound crazy, but it really does. It goes against everything that I believe in. But there were lines crossed on this one, and apparently she's not the only one that crossed those lines, and it's kind of put me in a position where my attorney would like to file on a bunch of people and serve them all at the same time. It makes me uncomfortable, and it makes me look like something that I'm not. Had maybe I not come forward and said in the beginning, this is the person, and this is the person that I'm going after. The reason is this person has crossed a line. I never watched it. So as paralegals and other people started to look through all of that stuff, It turns out that there's another woman or two who did this, and there's a guy, oddly enough, who did this as well. I am a kind, empathetic person. What a lovely thing to say, Roberta. I feel I couldn't say a bad thing about anybody in this chat. I mean that. It's kind of unhealthy, isn't it? Truthfully. But you know, it's funny that you bring that up, because that's kind of my problem with the United States of America. We became ugly in a lot of ways. And I don't mean the citizenry, right? I love most of the people in America. But when you set your goals as high as we do in that country, and you say things like all men are created equal and endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights, that's heavy duty, right? But we can't live up to it, can we? I mean, look back over the years since we've said that, and there were laws that were enacted just to go after people who didn't look like me or didn't look like the people writing those laws. And you hear people say stuff like that and you shake your head, because you go, you know, it's not pleasant to think about. But go spend about 13 years in prison, and you will notice that there is an unbelievable disparity among people who look like me versus people who are a lot darker in complexion than me. And it's very easy to sit back and say, well, it's like that because they commit more crimes. That's everybody's favorite line, and that's bullshit. It really is. I'm sorry. Pardon my French. I'm trying not to do that. But it's not right. That's not correct. It just isn't. And I can tell you how I know this, because my crime of choice was theft. Right? That's how I supported my drug habit, was by stealing. And I can't tell you how many chances I got. And I mean that literally. I can't tell you. If I had to take a guess, I would say that I probably got arrested for theft somewhere in the 20 times, maybe 25 times before I ever saw the inside of a prison. And if you're black, that's just not how it goes down. It's just not. And I knew a bunch of black thieves, you know, who were in prison for very similar crimes. Hey, Barbara, wait. And they sure as hell didn't get 25 tries. So that's kind of a disappointment. And the other thing that's amazing is the police presence where I live is 10 times higher than the police presence were anywhere that I lived in the United States of America. You will see more cops on the boardwalk here than you will see any other place. They're every 20 feet. That would not make me feel safe in the United States of America. It would make me feel the exact opposite, right? Because of the life that I lived, and maybe I deserve that, right? Till the end of time, maybe I just deserve to be saddled with that and everything that comes along with that. But my pulse would quicken when I saw a cop. And even, I'm not breaking the law, I'm not doing anything wrong, but we enacted some laws in the US that, I'm sorry, are stupid. Right? They just are. There are a lot of states, not all, but almost every state, certainly anyone that I've ever lived with. And I don't have a domestic violence charge on my record, right? Which is amazing. Not because I've ever put hands on a woman, but because I lived in states where if anyone called the police and they said, you need to come out here, there's an argument, there's a domestic violence situation, whatever. When the cops show up, someone's going to jail. The state of Nevada, it is policy. If they get a phone call, when they show up, someone is going to jail. That's just how it works. There's always going to be someone that gets arrested. And it was amazing. But I was with a person. This was a rule. And imagine having this as a rule. But one of the rules that I had was threaten to call the cops on me for some reason, and I'm never going to speak to you again, because it became a weapon. And I was married to somebody. And we got into an argument, and this person said to me, I will call the cops and you will go straight back to prison. And I didn't hit this person. We were angry. We were yelling at each other, both of us. The voices were raised. And I said, I'm leaving. I'm going to go for a walk, right? I was trying to blow off steam. I said, I'll be back in about a half hour, maybe an hour. And she said, step out that door and I'm calling the cops and you will go straight back to prison. So I didn't walk out that door. I did, however, get her the hell out of my life. I didn't do it that day because I was terrified. Here was a person that absolutely could make a phone call and I'd be gone. So I said, we'll have a seat and we'll talk through this. And the following day, I packed everything that I couldn't live without and I got the hell out of there. right? But that's a law in a lot of places. And since I have been here on at least 3 different occasions, I have seen interactions between the police and other people. And these interactions, in virtually every case in the US, I'd have seen somebody go to jail. It's just that simple. But it doesn't rise to the level where they want to destroy somebody's life, where they want to throw somebody into a situation that is going to make them wildly uncomfortable. Question, Tommy, as a convicted felon like myself, did you have to deal with any red tape when moving to Ecuador? You betcha. You betcha. Now, the policy in Ecuador is you are not, it doesn't preclude you from moving to this country if you are a convicted felon. It's not a problem. You can't be a convicted felon and fall into a couple of different categories. One happens to be what I get accused of by Merrill and the other crew all the time. If you have a crime against a child, don't bother filling out any paperwork. Hello, Kellyanne, good to see you. Hey, Puka Vista. If you have a crime against a kid, you're not going to be able to live here. They're not going to let you immigrate to this country, plain and simple. If you murdered somebody under any circumstances, right, a self-defense killing, you're probably not going to get away with living here. If there were charges filed and someone lost their life, you're wasting your time filing that paperwork. And that's almost anywhere. The more I research, the more I realize that is damn near everywhere. Hey, Ashley G, good to have you. I mean, anywhere. So yeah, but there's a lot of hoops you got to jump through. You have to do what's called an apostolized background check. And in my particular case, I have to show that I'm rehabilitated. And that's a difficult thing for most people to prove. How do you prove you're rehabilitated? You know, how does that happen? You can say, well, I haven't been arrested for anything in 14 years, right? That sounds good. I haven't committed any crimes, since getting out of prison. I got off paper in half of the time because I didn't get any write-ups or get, felony drug tests or do any of those kind of things. All that helps. But what really helps me is the lifeboat. When I was working to try to help my friend Q get out of prison, we had over 1,300 letters, which gives you an idea how many people have hauled ass. Because we had 1,300 letters from people that said without the lifeboat, they would probably be using drugs or getting high. And the purpose of this was to help Q. But the way that almost every single one of those letters were written, Q never got a chance to talk to anybody directly, right? I got out and you hear his voice through me. And that's, so most of these letters did a whole lot of good to help sort of show what I've done and the fact that I've been rehabilitated, so to speak. Yeah, smack that like button, says Roberta. And if you've never hit the subscribe button, do it. I promise you'll thank me later. KK, good to see you. And I'm not saying that because of me, but this is the coolest group of people you're ever going to see in one spot on the internet. For that, I promise you. Demon, good to see you. Spanx is doing fantastic. I talked to him. I was going to say I talked to him today, but I didn't. I talked to him 2 days ago. Today, he and I were texting back and forth. He was doing some things with one of the vehicles. When I left my vehicles to Spanky, which was nice, right? I'm not taking. I had a couple of bikes and I had a car, and all of those things were left to Spanky. So he's been, he kept the car, which is cool, and he was getting rid of some of the other stuff. We have been talking about some of the business in that, so to speak. I need the love boat, Rocket Queen. So do I. I'm telling you, I need this boat, more than anybody I do. It was the greatest idea that I ever had. And something that's funny because people reach out to me, and I think this probably happens to anybody that's a content creator. They reach out and they say, I'm thinking of starting a YouTube channel. Spanx is definitely a treasure. Holy crap, is he? Holy crap, is he? I couldn't be more proud as a dad of my son. He's an amazing, amazing kid. But I had a guy, and if you've been on the boat a long time, you've heard this story. It was a man, and he reached out to me and he said, do you have any advice concerning starting a YouTube channel? Any advice you can give me will really help. Johnny says, don't do it. And I said, well, yeah, I could probably give you plenty of advice. Do me a favor and tell me what your channel is going to be about. And the person said, I'm not really sure yet. And I said, then don't start a YouTube channel, right? Because if you don't know exactly what the channel is about, then chances are the reason you're going into this isn't going to be a good enough reason, right? To keep you in it. if you're dumb enough to start a YouTube channel, and I say that because or to start a in real life YouTube channel, a YouTube channel where you sit in front of a camera and talk about who you are, because you're coming on and saying, hey, do me a favor and tell me my nose is too big. Do me a favor and tell me you think I'm a thief. Do me a favor and talk about my parents. Do me a favor and crap on my kids. It's really what you're opening yourself up for. There better be a serious passion to what you're doing, because if you're doing this to make a living, statistically speaking, this is not a great way to make a living. It really isn't. Even the number of people who succeed enough to just become monetized is this big. And for those people who can then turn that into a way to make a living, it really, really is different. Reese says, I kind of still like it, but I was a Scientologist. You've been bull baited, right? You were trained from a very young age to not have things like this bother you. Oh, you have feelings and emotions, but you certainly didn't come about into them the way other people have. You sort of had to teach yourself those things later in life, and that's a bit of a challenge, isn't it? But I had the stupid idea, right, that I'll tell you straight out. Here's why I started a YouTube channel, because I didn't believe that in their present form, 12-step programs were a good deal. Not that the 12 steps aren't fantastic. I have no issue with the 12 steps. However, if you happen to be of the fairer gender, right? If you happen to be a woman, tell you what, put a deuce in the chat if you're a woman who has been to Narcotics Anonymous or Alcoholics Anonymous and got hit on viciously by every guy there, right? That is a lot of problems for a lot of people, right? It really is. It's ugly. And on top of that, and we've talked about this one a lot, on top of that, this is now a court-ordered program, right? You know, you get caught for driving under the influence, right? You're going to AA. If you get caught with MIP, you know what that is? That's minor in possession. And almost all 50 states have a minor in possession law. So you're 17 or you're 18 years old and you get caught because you've had a beer, or you have beer in the car, or you blew anything other than 000 on a breathalyzer, you now have to go to AA. If you were that same kid and you got caught with a bag of weed, right? Weed, you're going to get sent to NA, Narcotics Anonymous. You don't have a chance of saying no. You have to go. What made those programs fantastic was people said, I'm at the end of my rope. I have nowhere else to go, and I believe that this can help me. So I am going there because I want help. Now 70% of the room is not there for that reason. So they're cracking jokes, they're sitting back with their hands back, or they're hitting on every woman in the room. It's not what it used to be, right? And I fought really hard to turn my life around. I don't mean after going to prison. I tried to get off of heroin for decades. And I don't always go into the entire story, because your failures, although I highlight them, the almost successes are a lot harder to talk about. There were times I got a year of sobriety under my belt. There was another time I got almost 2. And you know something? On both of those occasions, excuse me, on both of those occasions, I relapsed in the parking lot of a Narcotics Anonymous meeting. And one of the times I relapsed with a guy I had never met before in my life. Didn't know him, but he was looking at me, and I looked up at him, and we made eye contact. And in a half a second, back and forth, we went, boy, how much bullshit is this, man? Right? In that look, he did this one. And I got up and walked outside, and as I was going out the door, he's like, you want to get high? I'm like, what do you got? He's like, smack. He's like, do you have a rig? I said, I got foil. He's like, go get it. And he and I smoked heroin in his car, little Toyota pickup truck. I didn't know this dude, right? Didn't even have to know him in order to relapse at one of those meetings, because he didn't want to be there and I didn't want to be there, right? Or I did, but not for the right reasons, right? I really didn't. So I thought, what if you took that out of the equation? What if you gave a place for people to go, right? V-Bombs nailed it, says AA and NA is the best place to get drugs. And if you think that there is even a hint of that trying to be funny, she's not. In fact, when I would move to cities, right, there were 2 places that you went if you wanted to get dope. One was an NA meeting. The other was a methadone clinic. Those are the 2 easiest places to meet people if you were trying to find people that could get you high. And that's tragic, but it's the truth. I went to a webinar on cyber aggression today. YouTube is the #1 social media platform for bullying for kids and adults. Yeah. They claim that 15 content creators have taken their lives in the last 5 years. Baloney. What they mean is they are aware of 15 people who had big enough channels and had enough of a social media footprint that they're taking their own lives. Why am I saying it like that? Demonetize me. Their suicides, right? We are aware of. I hate policing my own speech. God, I hate that. I'm trying not to curse because that's a bad thing for me. It's what I did in prison. I don't need to be doing it out here, right? Q would be going off. So I'm trying to stop that. It was a bad habit I got into, and I'm trying to stop that. But I don't want to censor words that are part of our language, right? I feel dumb putting a G on the word rape, right? It's not a grape. Grapes are fantastic, right? They come in 2 flavors. Sometimes you got to take the seeds out, but they are fantastic. That's not what happens to these women, right? Yeah. Or men. No, they get raped. It's a much different word. It means a much different thing. And I can't stand having to play the damn game, right? Because why, right? It's okay. It's okay for someone to go on and say anything they want about anybody and trash them. But if you use the word rape, they're going to demonetize your video. Does that seem like it makes a lot of sense? Doesn't to me. See, but here's what happens. Again, this much of YouTube is monetized. The vast majority of people who trash people, they never get a social media footprint. They don't. They get a very, very small number of people who watch, and the people that watch groove to this. The people that watch really enjoy watching people get destroyed, right? And I had a person reach out to me and apologize. And they said, if you want me to take down the videos I made about you. I didn't know who this person was. And then they showed up in the chat and I blocked them. They left a comment. I got rid of them. If they had never told me that they wanted to apologize, I wouldn't have known who they are, and I probably would have let them hang out. But I don't need someone that they said, right? George Carlin did talk to us about soft language. Don't keep adding syllables, right? If you don't know what B. Hendricks is talking about, Carlin did an amazing thing on what happens, how we soften speech up to mean different things. And he said, in World War I, men came home and they were shell-shocked, right? Boom. You know exactly what happened. These people, hey, lost again. These people had a very tough time in war. When they came back, they couldn't deal with society because they were shell-shocked. You know what a shell was? You know what shocked was? Not a lot of syllables. Got your attention. And then it became battle fatigue syndrome, right? You add a few syllables, and it takes a little bit of the sting out, right? And it keeps getting softened until now, and Carlin talked about this, it became post-traumatic stress disorder. Almost sounds pleasant compared to shell-shocked. But, the baseball versus football, very funny story about that. I think I've told it on here before, but the first time I heard that Carlin talk about sports, I was on an airplane flying to an island, and I was with my brother, and my dad was one row over, and we were looking at him, and we all had the headphones on, and because it was playing on one of the selections on the airplane, and all of us just had tears running down our face, laughing so hard. And these were in the days before there were digital screens. So you would plug in and you would just have to click through and check the little magazine. So most people were not watching this. So everyone on the plane was staring at us like, man, what the hell are these people on? But it really, I'm a huge, huge fan of Carlin. And I know Quibbs used to talk about it a lot. She said she was raised by George Carlin. And if you've ever listened to her sense of humor, it checks out. But yeah, I'm not playing those games anymore with the language. I'm just not. And it's amazing to me that we go out of our way to not offend people. And by we, I'm talking about the country that I just moved from, right? We go out of our way to not upset people, right? Like pedophiles. There's a word you can't say on the internet too. But we go out of our way, or on YouTube, we go out of our way not to upset them, right? They're coming out with words like a minor attracted person, right? MAT. Because minor attracted person is kind of foul too, but if you abbreviate it to MAT, kind of sounds like Matt. Hard to hate someone named Matt, right? They're pedophiles. They're freaks. But we're going to protect those people. That kind of speech, we can't say stuff like that. But you can come on here and say, this guy, douchebag, his family is this, this, and this. And he murdered somebody. You can just say whatever the hell you want about anybody. But when you start talking about people who really are scumbags, we're coming out with language to protect them. I'm disappointed in that. Thanks for the Brian Koberger show the other day. You know what? I'm going to be doing a lot of shows where I talk. I'm going to do a lot of shows where it's like how I started this channel, right? And if people want to ask questions about specific cases, I'm going to talk about them. And I'm going to work a whole lot of recovery in, and I'm going to work a whole lot of things in that I'm not targeting a group of people anymore. I did that, and I was really getting pretty good at it, right? Got to almost 30,000 subscribers by targeting people who are looking for specific things. And unfortunately, the problem with that is you begin to change why you started this, right? I don't want to become the Diddy channel, right? I can bring something to the conversation concerning true crime because I blew the first 46 years of my life and spent a lot of time in that life around criminals. And I love it. I do love talking about it, but this channel was not really built for that. And I know I pushed a lot of people away. The rules of the game have been turned upside down. Boy, you're not lying, man. Language whitewashing, not here anymore. Because you know what? I don't care anymore. And that's a beautiful thing, man. It really is. I don't care anymore. I'm going to do what I came here to do. So if they want to bury a video or whatever, the people who are going to see it are going to see it. And we're going to talk about things that, in my opinion, are important. Losing that actor to alcoholism and the way the articles, look up the articles on Michael Madsen. It's that they said, you know what? We're not bothering with an autopsy. Just not going to bother, because the doctors who treated him basically said the guy was such an alcoholic that we were waiting for this to happen. How tragic is that? Honestly, that he was just, he just drank away a beautiful career and a beautiful life so much that it's not even worth cutting him open to see if that's actually what killed them. That sucks. It really does. That sucks. And for someone that according to everyone, right, according to the society that most of us live and grew up in, he had everything. You'll hear that, right? Like Jude Law, he had everything. No, he didn't have happiness. He had a great friggin' job, made a hell of a lot of money, and he had fame, right? And everybody wants fame. Give that a try. I have no idea the kind of fame Michael Madsen had, right? Or Jude Law, or any of these people that were, you know, so damn famous. But I'll tell you something. I promise you that I don't think that 99.9% of the people that become famous are happy about it afterwards. I really believe that to be the case. You know, the ability for somebody to spot you at a distance, know who you are. They have made a decision about you earlier in your life. And even when the people are great, they walk up and tell you your name, right? Let's pick Ashley G. If someone walks up to you out of the blue and goes, "You're Ashley G." The first time that happens to you in life, you're like, holy hell, right? Who is this person? And the fact that you do a YouTube channel thing doesn't occur to you at first, especially if you've been arrested a few times, right? So somebody comes up and goes, "Hey, I know who you are." You're like, "Oh crap, here we go." And getting spit at, or any of the other things that have happened. It's great when someone wants to pat you on the back, but if there's somebody that hates you, or I told the story, and I won't go into details of it, but I went to an emergency room, right? An emergency room. And I went in and said, I know exactly what's up. I'm in triage. They're like, "Tell me your symptoms." I'm like, "I'm in atrial flutter. I don't need to," you know what I mean? I know I've been here like 6 times. I know exactly what you're going to do. I need an injection of this. It's going to drop my heart rate back down. It's kicked up, right? Look in your files, man. And the person looked at me and went, "Heath Ledger." That was the one I was trying to get. I said, "Jude Law." Jude Law's still alive. Heath Ledger. Thank you, Barbara Waite. That was a waste. That was a waste. And even worse, who was the gentleman that he won an Academy Award? His name is going to come to me. You watch. But yeah, it's such a waste. We look at these people and we go, they are so freaking talented, and they got everything they ever wanted. And then what happened? You know, it's just the guy that played Truman Capote. I prefer this, although I stuck around through the other stuff. I stayed because this is what helped me and you. And became my friend. I love that. Thank you, Tommy Bird. And you know what? Philip Seymour Hoffman, thank you. That's exactly who I was thinking about. You want to cry later? And I advise crying, by the way. Seriously, I recommend crying to everybody. None of us do it enough. But if you want to cry later, Go and look at his speech when he accepted. I'm not sure if it was the Golden Globe or the Academy Awards, but Philip Seymour Hoffman, who struggled with addiction to opiates and heroin in particular, is for a very long time. He won an Academy Award, I believe it was an Academy Award for Truman Capote. And when he got up for his acceptance speech, he said, "My mother's in the audience tonight." I'm paraphrasing the hell out of this, but he said, "My mother is in the audience tonight." He said, "And my mother was not just my mother, she was my father, because I didn't have a dad. And my mother had to be a dad. So when I took up hockey, my mom had to listen to hockey and had to get excited about hockey." And he went on to thank her for being the world's greatest mother. And then he said, "And we did it, Mom, right? We're here, we're at the party. This is it." And I remember thinking to myself, because I knew he was a heroin addict, and I thought, thank God. It's so great when someone beats it, right? It's so great when someone gets out of the life. When he died, I felt like I got shot in the stomach. Crying releases oxytocin, says Kristen Melinda. Yeah, I don't understand the science behind it as much as the next person probably does. However, I've always liked the phrase, "Tears are the telescopes through which men view God." Pretty fond of that one. And that's whatever God you want. But we tend to learn a lot more about ourselves and about the rest of the universe when we're crying. The cost of power and fame is often one's very self. I agree with you. And Tommy Bird says, birds of a feather, Jane. Yep, birds of a feather. I agree. River Phoenix was horrible. That was a horrible, horrible death. And I'll tell you something. There's a conspiracy theory around all of that that's horrible. For real. I don't know how much you know about him, but it's worth doing a deep dive on, because when River Phoenix overdosed and died, he was the happiest dude on earth. His band was killing it. He had a band called Alakazam, I believe was the name of the band. And this was not a Corey Feldman band. No offense, Feld Dog. But this was a guy who had musical talent. He was killing it. And there are some people who don't believe that his death was what we saw, which is pretty sad. At least Robert Downey Jr. got out of the life. Love him. Ashley G, I'm with you. You just want to pump your fist in the air. However, if we keep it real, and we need to, had Robert Downey Jr. been any other man other than Robert Downey Jr., he'd have gone to prison, right? And he'd have gone to prison for a good long time. And I don't know whether or not he'd have gotten clean. Maybe he would have. But we take people who are famous and we elevate them, right, to a status that allows them to get away with things that no one else would. Robert Downey Jr. got whacked enough to go into a neighbor's house by accident and fall asleep at the foot of a child's bed. And I assure you, if that was any other heroin addict in America, right, the prison rip that they would have got would have had them in there a very, very long time. But they don't treat, see, we don't have royalty in the United States, right? There are no kings and queens and, you know, and princes and princesses. So we have Hollywood. And God help us, we know what happened there, right? And it's always been that way. I mean, it really has. It's always been that way. I saw a short the other day that said the biggest drug addicts in the history of Hollywood. And I thought, you're going to make a short out of this? Huh? How are you going to get this done in 60 seconds? But they talked about Robert Downey Jr. They talked about that particular incident, which is why it was fresh in my mind. However, Judy Garland, right? The Wizard of Oz. You watch The Wizard of Oz and you think, you know, such a wholesome and beautiful movie. And then you read about the making of it, and you know, the mayor and the people in Hollywood were giving her handfuls of pills to get her to sleep and giving her handfuls of pills to perform, stay awake, go sideways, do a press conference. That poor woman never had a shot, you know? Good God, Ashley. I know someone that went into someone's house just like that and actually got away with it. She was terrified. Yeah. You know what, Sonny? Less Than Zero, says Sonny. An amazing film. If you never saw it, Less Than Zero is a movie about addiction, particularly crack cocaine addiction. And Robert Downey Jr., before he ever really got into the life as an addict, played an addict, one that ends up dying in the film. It's an amazing film, very depressing, but an amazing film, very, very well made. So many. Philip Seymour Hoffman was a tragedy. Robin Williams was a different kind of tragedy, but God almighty, what a tragedy. If you think drugs are a new thing in Hollywood, check out the book Hollywood Babylon. Amazing book. Absolutely an amazing book. Barbara is right. If you want to read some horrific stories, that's worth looking into because it's been going on since the dawn of man. So have freak-offs and debauchery and all of the things that have been going on. They go back forever, right? Fatty Arbuckle was tried for killing a woman, accidentally killing a woman while using a champagne bottle to do things to her that should never happen. The name of the film was Less Than Zero. Is the name of the film that we were discussing. Really worth looking at. Judy Garland was treated like garbage, a true legend, really sad, just used for money. Yeah, and it got worse, right? It got progressively worse because drug addiction does. And eventually pills just aren't going to get it done. So by the end, this is a person using needles. She was shooting dope. And it's hard to even think about that. This was the actress from The Wizard of Oz. To wrap your brain around the fact that there were grown-ass men shooting this little girl up, right? Because she was the cash cow, right? Now that's method acting, says Archie's mom, right? The crazy thing is it came before the others, like the other way around. That's odd. It's changing. The younger generation glorifies YouTubers and streamers. I think we're seeing the old prototypical movie star phase out in real time. Dane, that may be the case. And I think maybe it makes this worse, right? I'm going to throw out some names and you can put a deuce in the chat if you know the names I'm bringing up. Are you familiar with a YouTuber? Or now I guess he's no longer a YouTuber, but he was a YouTuber and he streamed on a lot of different platforms named Johnny Somali. You guys familiar with this name? Oops. By the way, Dasani, a 6-pack of these is less than $2. These big, huge bottles with the squeeze top, unbelievable. So yeah, this guy went to other countries and he had one of those like beat bars, the things like Beats by Dr. Dre, but it comes in a tube. It's just a speaker, right? It's a wireless speaker. And if you were to put a super chat up, then you could yell into this tube anything you want. So he's walking through like a Disney theme park kind of a thing. And people are yelling things that in a language he's not even speaking. This was in South Korea. And they're yelling things like, I like having sex with children. And they're yelling it in the native language. And this obnoxious bastard is walking around holding this thing up. Well, Dane says, I believe he's now facing 30 years. Hey, Monk, don't look him up. You'll thank me later. He is an absolute lowlife. The fact that you don't know who he is, good for you. Good for you. What? Here's how you win. You don't go look him up. Yeah, don't go look him up. I promise. That is how you win. The good news is this. He's facing 36, I believe, Dane Young. I think that's actually what he's facing. And he's not going to dodge this bullet. Amazingly, he just went off again. He did something dumb again. Said something along the lines of, I'm not going to do any time. They can't do anything to me. I'm a United States citizen. Stick with that, you obnoxious guy, you. There's a whole genre of people now. He's just the one that comes to mind the quickest. But there's a whole genre of people who go to other countries and they do what they call IRL streaming, right? IRL stands for in real life, except this is nobody's real life. Honestly, who does this in their real life? They run down the street and scare people, like yell at people. And you see, people in other countries jumping. I got here and I said to Johnny, one day we were in a store and we saw a shirt that said Arizona, Sunrise, Arizona, it said on it. And to fly to a different country, right? Thousands and thousands of miles from where you just left and see a t-shirt from the place you just left for sale. And he started to film it. Vitali's another one, to be sure. Punks are nice, Sonny. I like it. I like it. So Johnny starts filming. And I said to him, I'm like, do me a favor, don't do that. And when we got outside, he was like, what were you doing? I said, I just don't know. Are we insulting people here when we do that? Because now I'm hyper freaking focused on where I hit record, right? I really am. And there was a time I wouldn't have been because I'm not disrespectful. If I'm filming someplace, I'm doing it to celebrate the culture that I'm looking at. I'm there because what I'm looking at, I find so beautiful or so unbelievable that I want you all to have an opportunity to see it. Johnny and I are going to be filming. I'm not sure if we're going to get there this week or we're going to get there next week, but we're going out to hang out with some sea lions. And I'm not being funny, like literally hang out with some sea lions. There is a place here that as long as you are able, hey man, from 10,000 lakes, good to see you. Good to see you, Dennis. I'm glad you're here. If you go with people, right, they will actually take you out, and you can get very, very close to these as long as you have somebody with you that is going to make sure you're not a jackass. They're very comfortable with people here. And do you know why I find this fascinating? Because they've never met an American. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but there's never been a jackass like this guy here. You know, the Galapagos Islands, that's that's part of Ecuador. It's right off of the coast of where we are now. And the animals on the Galapagos Islands have no fear of human beings because they've never heard the thunder stick, right? Nobody ever showed up with a gun to kill any of them. And nobody ever hunted them, or nobody ever, chased them or threw things at them or did any of those things. Because from the day that Charles Darwin showed up and started drawing them, nobody else has ever been allowed to mess with them. Now, if you go there, you can bring home memories and you can leave footprints, but you're not doing anything else. And that's beautiful that there's wildlife out there that isn't afraid of human beings. What a great concept, right? Birds that fly up like, hey, it's another one of those hairless things. No fear whatsoever. However, hey, Renee B, no apologies necessary. It's, as human beings, we do consider ourselves the top of the food chain, and we tend to scare the crap out of every other animal on this planet. It's pretty wild when they're not afraid of you because you've never messed with them. And where we're going, no one's ever messed with a sea lion. So we're going to actually get very close to them. And if you're respectful and you talk to the people ahead of time, you can actually film it. So we're looking forward to taking everybody there. But the reason we didn't do that day 4, because we were talking about it on the plane here. This is something we knew that was possible. But we wanted to make sure that the ability to film and the ability to take an audience and allow them to see this isn't going to make everybody here angry. It would be really nice if streamers did that. But I promise you, we're going to go down and we're going to get really close to sea lions, and we're going to let all of you, we're going to take all of you with us. However, if I went there and started throwing beer cans at them, we'd get 1 million views. And that's tragic that that's what we've become. Right? And I mean we, not as the United States. I'm not picking on us. I'm talking about this thing. Right? Have you ever read what it says under the love boat? Right? It's said the same thing since day one. Trying to reimagine what social media can do. Stupid. But it's a hell of a dream. And we may not have 1 million people here watching, but the 116 that are, we are reimagining what social media can be. I believe that. I think that we're doing a much better job here, and I'm not tooting my own horn, I'm tooting yours, right? Because if I started to do the things that these idiots did, you guys would leave in a heartbeat. Now, a bunch of other people would show up, people that want to see other cultures messed with. It's disgusting, right? But it wouldn't be any of you. You guys would turn on me in a heartbeat. And I'd rather have 113 people that get to check out sea lions than have 1 million people who watched me abuse anything or anyone, or take joy in tearing something down instead of building something up. Right? It's probably a silly notion, huh? It's good to have a dream, says Sammy Sue. You know what? Everybody that has one, think about it. And anybody you can remember who says, I have a dream, it doesn't usually end up very well for. However, it doesn't mean you should stop. Ever. I mean, it really doesn't. It doesn't mean you should ever stop. My dog is my world and my biggest source of happiness. I'll tell you something. The only thing that would have kept me from leaving the United States and moving to South America is Squirrel Nut Zipper. Hey, Stealth Hound X, how are you? Welcome to the boat. We're glad you're here. YouTube doesn't take off much for me. Well, you know, I bet you were thinking they don't think much of you. You know what? We're glad you're here, Stealth Hound. Welcome to the boat. Glad to have you. You know, yeah, it's because I have a heart. It's because she's the greatest cat that ever lived, honestly. And same with the furry freshman The drunk freshman with fur. That's what my brother calls Katy Perry. She's like a drunk freshman from college, drunk college freshman with fur. She knocks everything over. She's loud as hell. Doesn't have a whole lot of respect for anything. She's going to. She's just a kitten, and she's now way bigger than Squirrel, and she's still a kitten. Like, she's still uncoordinated, and she's awake all the time. You know what I mean? Like, she plays until she falls down. Katy Perry's a completely different animal. Squirrel would rather sleep away half the day, and Katy just wants to play. So Squirrel has to find really unique places to avoid her, and she's good at it. You know, the one thing I'll give Squirrel is she's gotten very good at it. But they play nonstop. They chase each other around. It's great. But I promise you, I'd still be in the U.S. If they were not going to let us bring the cats here, I wouldn't have come. I wouldn't have. And someone asked earlier how hard it was, you know, with the felony and all that, to be able to immigrate. The most difficult thing, honestly, as far as paperwork and all that goes, was cats. You cannot imagine all the hoops you gotta jump through to get the cats here. And some of that too is just stress. You know, the stress that as you're doing it, holy crap, what happens if we get there and they say you're not bringing the cat in? It's not like I would go, all right, well, you know, you put them in quarantine, nada. No chance in hell are you taking my cat. I would turn around, I would fly back to the United States and see if we couldn't fix everything that we had got rid of. And, hey, can I get that back? I've decided I'm staying here. If there are no pets in heaven, I'm not going. Trust and believe there will be. Trust and believe there will be. And if there aren't, then I picked the wrong, I really am off on everything. If I get there and there are no animals, I really have been wrong about every single thing I believe in life. 100 plus nightly is actually pretty good. I wonder what you 30 years ago would think about that type of outreach. You know something, Dane? That's a really incredible point. It really is. And I think probably what I'm doing is, there was a time where we got like 1,500 people in the chat. However, no joke whatsoever, I think the most good I ever did on YouTube was when we used to have about 17 people in the chat. I honest to God, I look back on the days when we really had just a handful of people here, and we were able to do some really fantastic things at the time. We really were. It was incredible, and a lot of those people really were able to come out of some nosedives. There were some people there that were really fighting to try to live a better life. What's sad is all of those people got run off by hate, because most of them honestly were here until maybe 4 or 5 months ago. However, I don't think any of them are using. So if they've decided they hate me, God bless them. They can go somewhere and maybe find something that makes them happier. But the goal was never to make a crap load of friends in the first place. It really wasn't. The goal was to try to give people a place where they could show up and nobody was going to judge them. Archie's mom, I remember how you got your name. I love that. And they are angels in fur, aren't they? Pets are fantastic. They really are. They are fantastic. Hey, Court of Floor Reporter, good to have you here. Right? Jesus Christ comes back on a white horse. So if there are no horses, there are no other animals. I like it. I also remember reading pretty specifically about lions and lambs laying down together, right? Something along those lines. Smaller venues, garnering more intimate connections and impact. Kelly, I agree. And sometimes, honestly, I'm not bummed out. I really am not. The size thing, I'm happy as hell with 100. I really am. And I've had this conversation with other people. The first person that ever said that to me was a minister, a guy that I was talking to about addiction and this and that. And I said, you know, I've got a small channel. And he said, really, how many people are in your channel? At the time, I think I had 13,000 or something like that. And his eyes just got huge. And he went, that's a small channel? And I'm like, yeah, it's a pretty small channel. And he just said, good God. He said, can you imagine if that was a church? He said, a church of 13,000, it would be a huge church, wouldn't it? And every once in a while, you kind of need someone to smack you in the head in a nice way. And it was one of those things that kind of smacked me in the head in a nice way. I try not to preach God here, right? Because I don't want to offend someone who needs to come here and talk about how they need help with whatever their problem and addiction is. God forbid I run someone off because I'm doing the my God's better than your God thing. I'll tell you something, though. I'll never BS either, right? Everybody knows my belief. And I'm never going to be denying any of that either. I just don't shove it down anyone's throat. And I will also tell you this, more importantly, statistically speaking, people who believe in something greater than themselves, I don't care what it is you believe in, but people who believe in something greater than themselves have a much higher chance of success in sobriety than people who don't. I'm not making that up. You can look it up, right? Which is why I think like in 12-step programs, it used to drive me insane, but they would say, my belief is that Christ died, got nailed to a tree, got up 3 days later, right, for the forgiveness of sins, and that I put him on that tree more than anybody else. And nothing I do on this planet is going to impress my way into heaven. It's by his grace. That's what I believe. But I don't shove it down anyone's throat, and it's never going to be my get down. Occasionally someone will reach out to me and say, I'd like to talk to you about your beliefs. And I'll do that. I don't preach it here because I don't want to run someone off. And there was a day in my life, right, where if somebody had a message of God in any way, it would have run me off. But I remember going to 12-step meetings, particularly Narcotics Anonymous. And then I got smarter because I really did want to get sober, but I would not go to NA. I would go to AA because I didn't have a drinking problem. So the odds of me running into someone who had heroin was a lot less at a AA meeting than it was at an NA meeting, and the concepts were still the same. Unfortunately, there were still a bunch of people there that didn't want to be there, and very often they had drugs on them, so it didn't. But you know, they talk about a power greater than yourself restoring you to sanity. And the guy from the front of the room said, that higher power can be a doorknob. You've heard this, right? Doesn't matter if it's, you know, whatever it is, it's going to be a doorknob. I don't know where you guys have been in your life, but I would imagine that all of you have endured some kind of hell. If you've been here for any length of time, my particular kind of hell, and I brought it on myself, by the way, but if you've ever seen one of those little cages that they have in prison, it looks like a phone booth, right? And on the front, it's got mesh, and on the sides, it's got mesh, little metal mesh, like diamond-shaped little mesh thing. And on the top, it has just bars that go across, so you can't climb out the top. And I got handcuffed. They had the door open. They never shut the door. But I was handcuffed with my hands above it. And I'll challenge you. Put your hands above your head like this and try to hold them like that for, say, 45 minutes to an hour, right? Maybe 2. Maybe 3. When they finally quit hitting me and took my hands and uncuffed them, my hands dropped to my side. And the cop was like, put your hands, you know, there's a food slot. He's like, put your hands through there. I got a handcuff. And I was like, there's no way in hell I can move my hands. There's no way in hell I can move my hands. But when this was going on, and guys literally, because what I did was I hit a cop, right? Not in prison. I punched an officer. Dumbest thing I've ever done in my life. Hindsight being 20/20, dumbest thing I've ever done. But as they would walk by, they would just, you know, give me a shot in the ribs, right, or punch you in the stomach. And I understand why they're doing it. Like this, I hit this guy, and I hit him hard, and I kind of sucker punched him, and nothing that I did was justifiable. So they were doing what they were doing. But I'll tell you something. A doorknob didn't get me through that, and I don't think there's a doorknob made that ever would. Now, I believe that there are people who would pray to other things, but it was my belief in something considerably bigger than me that kept me from really doing stupid stuff that day, right? Because the only thing, I was hanging there, I thought to myself, I could spit at this dude, right? The next guy that comes in, and by then I had been slapped in the mouth once or twice, right? So I could have really hocked a crap load of blood on somebody. And that would have been an attack, because at that point in my life, I had Hep C, right? That could have done it. And instead, I came to realize that other than that, the only thing that I could do was choose not to hate them, right? That was the only, there was nothing I could do to take any control back. But they wanted me to hate them. They wanted me to curse at them. They wanted me to act like an ass. So one guy walked in and he was getting ready to hit me. And I said, hey, man, I'm going to pray you have a safe ride home tonight. And he goes, are you threatening me? I said, no. Threatening you would be, I'm going to hurt you on the way home. I'm really going to pray that you have a safe ride home. I hope you get home to your family. I hope everything is good. He hit me, right? But that cop, no lie, went up to me once and said afterwards, I regret that more than anything. He said, I really thought you were being a jackass. And I wanted to say to him, well, you had hit me 3 other times that day. You know, it wasn't like you chose to hit me. But anyway, what possessed you to do that? I was in visiting. And at the time I was married. And I had hey, days of the week, glad to have you here. I had a wife who was an attorney, and she was a lovely woman. And people would often say, they would say, she looks a lot like this actress or that musician or whatever. And she was one of those people that looked like a lot of people, because everyone would say, you know who your wife looks exactly like? But the name that came up the most was Britney Spears. People used to say a lot. So this officer said to me, your wife is the most beautiful woman I've ever seen come through a visiting room. And I said, thank you. I appreciate the hell out of that. It's a kind thing to say. And then he said some really foul things about what he would like to do to her. And I didn't hit him. I swear to you, I didn't. I left. I went out. About 2 weeks later, she was visiting again, and she would fly into town. And he said even more foul stuff. And I said to him, boss, I've never been disrespectful to a cop here ever. Like, I am the most respectful inmate in history. Why would you say some low-life crap to me like that? I didn't say it like that. I was a lot rougher. And he said, hey, write it up. You unhappy about it? So I did. I filed paperwork on him. A BP-8, a BP-9, right? These are federal papers, a BP-10. And then it got all the way to the warden. And the warden called me into his office and said, I want you to remove this. And I said, I beg your pardon? And he said, you got to remove this because this is going to stay on this guy's permanent file. And I said, it should. And you shouldn't have this guy in visiting. Like, this is what this dude said. And I probably went 4 months of visiting and didn't see him. Like, I thought they cleaned it up. They got rid of the guy, right? I don't care. It's all good. And then we went in there one day and there he was. And the sad thing is, I could tell you that he said things that caused me to hit him. But I said to my wife that day, if this dude says anything, I'm knocking him out, right? I'm going to hit this dude with everything I got. If he says one word, I'm going to hit him. And that, it's not smart. They were words. They were just words. They were disrespectful, right? But they were just words. And he said something. In fact, I'll tell you what he said. And they're stripping you out. You're getting naked. He commented on the size of my junk and said, yeah, and I'm way better built. She's going to be a lot happier. And I did the thing from the movie Bugsy. I said, oh, you're not looking at it right. And as soon as his head went down, I hopped up and punched him as hard as I could. And I got him right on the button. If you're a dude or you've watched boxing, there is a place you can hit somebody. It's right about here, right? And their head does this one. And when it goes to the side, it literally disconnects for a split second. Like there's that spinal cord takes just enough of the hit where your computer gets turned off. And he fell like an oak tree forward, cut his face. It was all kinds of bad. Not worth it. And they came in and pepper sprayed me and dragged me out of there and handcuffed me for hours. And it was, God is no doorknob. And I'll tell you something, you know, God is no doorknob, because now I got to go up into a cell with another dude and I can't lift my hands above my waist. I literally cannot lift up my hands. So if the guy I'm going in with decides he wants to punch me in the face, and this happens, right? One guy has to take their handcuffs off before the other guy, which means if that guy wants to punch you while you're in handcuffs, you're in deep, deep doo-doo, because the cops aren't going to come in and help you until they got 5 other cops to back them up. And a guy can kill you. It happens all the time. So I went in and the dude looked at me and he goes, you can uncuff first. And I go, no, man, go ahead. Right? And I didn't say it to be cool. I said it because I couldn't lift my arms, you know? So after he did, I went up and I'm leaning against the door like this. And the cop pulled my hands up and undid my cuffs. And the guy said to me, he goes, are you unable to use one arm? And I said, I'm unable to use either arm. And he's like, how does that happen to you? I was like, told him what happened. And he goes, man, were you scared I was going to hit you? I said, you got no idea. But the doorknob wasn't a doorknob at that point. I was in the state of Arizona, but I wasn't in the state of Arizona. I was in the feds, but I just happened to be in Arizona when I did it. You know what? It was a life-changing day for me. I'm not kidding. There's nothing about that I'm making light of in any way. That was a wildly life-changing day for me. It was the day that I realized that there were times that the only thing you can do is choose not to be hateful, right? And to choose not to be hateful to someone who really deserves a little hate, right? If I had realized that 4.5 hours earlier, then I wouldn't have hit that dude, right? I would have prayed for him, as crazy as that might sound to some of you. But I'm still doing that for people. Right. Even some of the people that cross lines that I'm in the process now of taking action against, I still pray for those people. You may not believe that, but I swear to you, that's the truth. I had a great counselor who tried to get me to go to AA meetings. Alcohol wasn't my problem. I never stepped into a meeting. The whole idea seemed uncomfortable. Well, I was never comfortable in one, ever. And I BS'd my way through a lot of them. Right. By the time I was forced to go to these things, I was a public speaker for a living. I mean, that's what I did. So I could get up and do a meeting, and I could do it whacked on heroin, and no one would know. But that's kind of, that had been my life up to that point, Yeah, it was a nasty thing for the CO to say. You want to hear the final punchline to that, Lost Again? Here's the punchline. I'm in my prison cell, and they said to me, I said, where am I getting shipped? And I knew I was going to go to a higher custody level, probably a maximum, even a super max, but not the super max, which would be ADX. And the guy said to me, you're going to the SMU. I said, the SMU was for gangbangers. These are for people that stabbed cops. These are for people that had 40 and 50 write-ups. And they kept saying to me, he's just threatening you. You're not going to the SMU. And I sure as hell did. I went to Lewisburg, Pennsylvania, to the Special Management Unit. And if you want to have some fun sometimes, Google Lewisburg prison and see what comes up. Watch a little bit about that place. It was the ugliest place I've ever been in my life. It really was. However, I got out of there a lot better. But I spent 14 months in the SHU, in the segregated housing unit, right? The hole. There, waiting to get sent to the SMU, which is like 36 months in the hole, right? It's just the worst hole ever, but it's 36 months in a prison where you're on lockdown 24/7. And while I'm waiting to go there, I'm also waiting for a new case because I punched a cop in the face. And when he fell down, he cut his face. So not only am I in deep trouble, but I'm about to get a hell of a lot of more time. I think I was looking at 8 years for assault on staff. Assault on staff with severe bodily injury. And right before I got sent to the SMU, and at the time I was married to an attorney, so she was at least ready to help defend me, right? She was in the process of putting together a kind of a case kind of thing. And one day a guy knocks on the door, and I walk to the door, and he's wearing a suit. And the only person you're ever going to see in a suit in prison is the warden. There's nobody else in a suit. And this guy was young as hell. And my last name was Miller, right? So he says, Miller, come here. And I walked up to the glass. I was like, what? And he slides something under the door, and he said, sign this. And I start reading it. And he's like, hey, man, sign it. And I was like, dude, I'm not going to sign something I didn't read. And he said, it says we're dropping the charges against you with prejudice, right? It ain't coming back. They're dropping these charges and they can never charge me again. And I said, why? And he's like, I can't tell you that. Do you not want to sign it? And I'd love to be able to get a copy of it to see what my signature must have looked like, because I was doing this number and I signed it as fast as I could. And it was, I'm not exaggerating, a couple of years before I found out what happened. And the way I found out what happened is I heard a guy telling the story of me hitting the cop. The difference is he was telling the story as if he knew me, right? No joke. Like, I'd never seen this guy before in my life. And he's telling the story. And I was like, when was this? And he tells me where. And I was like, you knew this guy? He's like, I knew him well. And I'm like, and what happened? And boy, I should let him tell you the story, because his story of what I did was so much cooler, right? Like, I hit this guy 4 or 5 times and I stomped on him and like all this crap. Like, the story got a lot bigger than I did. And I go, why is this guy not in deep trouble? He goes, because that cop got caught coming through the metal detector with a thermos. You know those huge thermoses the cops carry, right? Everybody carries those big thermoses. He had the bottom of it reverse threaded, right? So if you go to loosen it, you're going to make it tighter. You have to do it. And he would stuff the outside of it, right? Because they're hollow. That's how the thing inside stays warm, right? You don't let, anyway, he was putting stuff in it. So he got caught bringing in dope and a cell phone for a gang inside. And this is what happens to most cops that start to bring in contraband. They will let you bring in stuff until you don't agree with them about something, or you try to raise the price, or you say no. Okay, I want you to bring in more. No, I'm not doing that. I'm getting nervous. Then they just turn you in. So he got arrested for bringing contraband into a facility. Now they don't want to go to court with an officer that got caught bringing crap in. Right, that's not going to work. So the charges were dropped. Probably not a doorknob that helped with that one either. But if think of it any way you want. I've been thanking the doorknob every day since. I feel like I really got away with that one. Not the smartest move of my life. I take no pride in what I did that day. I promise you I don't. I'm proud that I didn't spit blood at one of them. it would have got me so much more trouble. That would have been an assault on staff that I never would have gotten. I mean, I would have gone to court for that. They're so serious. If you spit blood at a cop, you're almost always going to get a really big charge inside, especially if your blood tests for anything, right? It's considered that you're trying to kill them for all intent and purpose. And I was thinking about it because there's nothing else I could do. And that was the mindset. I was hanging there by my hands. I could no longer hold them up. So at this point, my hands are just sort of hanging. And I couldn't think of anything else. And I think that as human beings, we get to a point when we can't control a situation, we go nuts, right? The ability, and that's why addiction is so absolutely effing awful. The only way you can forget that you have zero control over your life is to continue to do the substance that is causing the zero control over your life, right? What Robin Williams said, I do cocaine and I'm a new man. The trouble is that new man wants to do some cocaine. And he says it to be funny, right? But it's literally what happens with addiction, right? I do heroin and I'm miserable for being such a piece of crap. But once I do the heroin, that misery goes away. I no longer think of myself as a piece of crap because I can't feel any emotion, right? It just turns off. It takes away the spiritual pain, the emotional pain, and the physical pain. So, but as that 8 hours or 10 hours or whatever, how much legs the dope's got, as that wears off, I'm not just getting dope sick. The reality of what a piece of human garbage I've become, right, starts to set in. Now, I'm not a piece of human garbage. I'm a guy with a disease. But there was nobody out there until I met the guy that saved my life. There was nobody out there that could explain that to me. Everyone else I had ever met, hey, Air Supply, good to see you. Everyone else I had ever met said, your problem is willpower. Your problem is that you don't have the heart to quit. The reason you do this stuff is because you're a bad human being. See, addiction isn't a disease in the eyes of most people, right? It's a flaw. It's a character defect. It's not. And if there's somebody in your life that's making you think addiction is a character defect, they're wrong. They're the one jacked up. You're not. Believe that. Science backs that up. You understand? It's not just Tommy Scoville saying that. I promise you. Science backs that up. You have a disease. They wouldn't shit on you for having lupus, right? Pardon my French. They wouldn't mess with you for having diabetes. And the people who go, it's not like that, right? It's not like that. You don't choose to have a disease. You don't. But you don't choose to be an addict either. You make bad life choices that takes a predisposition to addiction and turns it on like a light switch. Kind of like diabetes. You can be born with diabetes or you can develop it over time, but you're not going to develop it unless you already had that genetic component waiting. Now, you live without doing any sugars, or you live without ever putting on weight, or you do anything like that, right? It's the exact same thing, folks. It really is. Except no one's going to crap on you for being a diabetic. You weak piece of crap. I cannot believe you can't process sugar like the rest of us. Toughen up a little bit. Huh? How about some willpower? Put your mind to this. Be tougher. It's ridiculous, isn't it? But people will say that to someone today. I promise you, around the world and in the country that you're in, there are going to be people telling relatives of theirs that you could beat this if you just had more willpower. Willpower can definitely be an illusion. Addiction can't be cured with willpower. Whether it's drugs, sex, food, alcohol, gambling, that's how it works. You're damn right. It can't be. It would be lovely if it was willpower. Are you kidding me? Johnny Scoville said to me, I'm going to run a marathon in Siberia. We were in Texas. And I said, when is this happening? And I don't remember whether he said 90 days or 120 days. Right? And I was like, no, you're not. Like, I'm not trying to be a jerk, but you can't train for a marathon in 90 days and run one. He can. He can. Same reason that you could watch that fool eat, right? 36 Carolina Reapers or whatever the hell he did, right? Because willpower is something that my brother has in spades, right? But willpower is not how a person gets sober. It's just not how it works because it's a disease. It has nothing to do with willpower. If it was willpower, I'd be running a completely different channel. I'd probably sound like that jackass Wes Watson I've been talking about all the time. I'd just be screaming at you, telling you how worthless you are. Just book up, right? Start sounding like a drill sergeant, right? 30 chocolate primos. There you go, Dane. That might have been it. That's how they do it in Scientology. I pulled in diabetes for sure. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that absolutely amazing? Can you imagine, a religion that tells people you pulled that in? Imagine looking at someone that's been raped and telling them that they pulled that in. Boy, man, if that doesn't give you a little perspective on the evil of that cult, right? Think about that again. Well, you pulled that in. Anything that bad happens to you, you're pulling that in. Oh my God, man. Wherever L. Ron Hubbard is, I hope he's having a real rough day. I'm sorry, and I believe he is, but he really deserves that. To be fair, I am a sinner. You know what? So am I. So is everybody. But that's a whole lot different than deserving the things that happen to you, right? Sinners don't get sexually assaulted because they're sinners. They get sexually assaulted because someone else is a sinner, right? Someone else is a sick bastard. That's why that happens. Nobody brings that in. Nobody brings in cancer, right? It's pretty ugly stuff, man. Pretty ugly stuff. I have heard Christians say you need more faith. You know something? I have too. Let me rephrase that. I've heard people say that, right? That if you had more faith, you could pray this away or that away or whatever. You know what? Get away from them. Seriously, get away from them. Sorry, it's my humble opinion. If people who, yeah, I could spend 4 hours on that and it probably wouldn't be healthy. But I will tell you this, and I've said this a million times. My biggest problem becoming a Christian was Christians, but I've met real ones. I really have. I have met real ones. And in my humble opinion, maybe a dozen. And by that, I mean this. One in particular jumps to mind. And if you met this man, you would not go, yeah, he was a Christian. But if you watched hand grenades flying at this guy, like if you watched the world melting down at its worst, this person did every single thing that you would want someone who has faith in God to do. His patience level probably wasn't great, and he's been known to drop some 4-letter words, but he lived the Christian life in a way that you had to watch him to realize it was actually awe-inspiring. And I met a woman through YouTube who I said things to that I promise you anybody else on planet Earth would never have spoken to me again. And this person instead prayed for me every day. And the reason that I'm doing this still, and the reason that I seem to be considerably more back on track than I was, is because I wholeheartedly believe that because this woman and a handful of other people didn't give up on me when they should have. Kind of the story of my life, actually. People who never, ever gave up on me when they should have. Kind of why I believe in Jesus too. For all of the times that I crapped all over him and everything about him, and yet he never took off. Yeah. All right, everybody. It's about an hour and 19 minutes. I won't keep you here any longer, but I really do appreciate you. And if you ever have a question about anything, right? The direction of the shows have always been, I shouldn't say always, for the very beginning of this YouTube channel, the reason Squirrel's name was Squirrel was because I may start off as a subject of this, but if someone said, hey, I'm struggling, and they brought something up, the show would shut down and we would talk about whatever was going on with that person. Or if someone had a question about something that had to do with something I could answer, prison, true crime, whatever, I didn't need to stick with whatever was going on. So, and you know, again, you want to see people say they don't see God or they don't, you know, it would be easier if you could see him. Here's one for you. I started a YouTube channel, and I say, because it had been a long time since I had a cat. I went to prison for a long time, and I love cats more than I love humans. I'm sorry, it's the truth. So I said, I'm going to get a cat, and I want you all to name the cat. All right, we're going to take a vote, and everybody voted on what they wanted to name the cat, and everybody chose the name Squirrel. And as a way to pick on me, but I said, all right, I can see that. And when I went to pick the cat, I went to a shelter to save one. And Squirrel was a little older than every cat there. She was about 6 months old. She was still really, really small, but she was a 6-month-old kitten. And I have a thing for torties. So I walked back out to the woman and said, I want the cat in cage 3. And she just started laughing and she said, cage 3. I said, yeah. She's like, in what room? She's like, there are 400 cages here. We don't number our cages. She's like, I have no idea what you're talking about. I go, well, how do I do this? And she said, if you go in there, there's a card on the top of it, slides out of a piece of plastic, and it will have the name of the cat. Just bring it to me. And I pulled the card out, and it said Squirrel on it. Swear to God, took a picture of it. Had the adoption papers where it says her name and what you could change her name to. Of all of the words in the English language, my channel voted to have the cat's name Squirrel. I pick a cat out of 300 cages, and I pick a cat named Squirrel. Just not a name you usually name a cat, right? Mittens. Like if everybody voted Mittens and I pulled the card out and the white pawed cat was named Mittens, you could go, that's not all that odd. You know, that kind of makes sense, right? Or Snoopy or something that kind of makes sense because people think Squirrel absolutely floored me. I remember coming back and doing a show that day and be like, look at this crap. You know, even if you didn't pick the name, I would have got it. Am I in Quito? I am not. Days of the week. I am on the ocean. I am in the city of Salt, Salinas, Ecuador. Doesn't really get any more west into the Pacific Ocean in South America than where I am right now. And pretty happy about it. Have I ever seen someone killed in prison? I have. I saw one for sure. And I'm sure, and I'm 90% sure that I've seen at least 3 others that didn't make it. But it's very difficult to find out, right? Because once they take someone away, more often than not, the cops are not going to tell you what happened to the person. Like they just don't, because they don't want the people who are still there to try to, start. It causes problems. But when I was at the special management unit, I was across the hall from a guy who got stomped to death. In fact, I did a show called I Watched a Man Get Killed and Did Nothing About It, I believe is what I called it. And you can go back and watch that and it'll tell you the whole story of how that one went down. That one has left a mark on me. And you know what? Almost everything that happened in prison left a mark on me. But that one is one that I'll take with me forever. And you know what? There's nothing I could have done. But I didn't try either. And it is what it is, But yeah, it's people, unless you're on a 1 and a 2 yard, if you're on a yard where there's action, if you're on a yard where people are going to hurt one another, you're going to see some things that you're never going to be able to unsee, and it's going to do that PTSD thing. There was a period of time where I would have nightmares and I would relive the scenario, except the guy getting stomped was always a relative or somebody that I loved or somebody that I cared about. And I went through for a really long time. And I haven't had that dream, right? Thank God. I won't knock on anything. Those superstitions don't mean much to me anymore. But thank God I haven't had a dream like that in a really long time, right? It's been over a year since I had a dream like that. And yeah, pretty happy about it. But the easiest way to avoid this, don't go to prison. It's not a very difficult thing to avoid, believe it or not, right? They do make the laws fairly obvious in most countries, right? It's pretty obvious. The United States is a little different. As I was saying earlier on in the show, we've watched the police interact with 3 people since being here, right? Where they either pulled someone over, and in one case, the guy was really being an ass. It was obvious. The guy was driving probably 3 times the speed limit. And the cop got in this kid's face. The kid must have been 20. The cop got in his face. His finger was like 2 inches away. And the last time he did this one, he kind of snapped him in the nose with it. Sort of boom, right? Gave him one on the nose. And I was with Johnny. They're arresting that dude. And then they put him back in the car and the guy drove away. And we've now seen that 3 times. And the last time it happened, it was right out of my bedroom window. And we're up high. But I said to Johnny, I'm like, hey, come here. The cops just pulled somebody over. It was on the road right next to where we live. And he called it as soon as he walked up. And they were patting this guy down. I'm like, yep, we're finally going to see someone who's in trouble. And Johnny's like, no, I'm just going to put him right back on the bike, because they was on a motorcycle. And they did put him right back on the bike. It was they're not trying to get you into a system here. And I'm sorry to be this guy, but in the United States of America, they very much want to get you into the system, and then they want to keep you in the system. And I'm not anymore. I'm out. I was out before I left, but I'm really out now. I am Tommy. This is The Love Boat. Between now and the next time I see you, put a little love in your heart and come back tomorrow night, people. I promise. We'll have a few laughs. All right? Good night, everybody. See you on the next one. God bless.